Hey guys, VGGary here. The spring anime season has come to a close, so I decided to make a video talking about the shows that I watched and if I feel they're worth watching. So the first show I'd like to tackle is Boku no Hero Academia, or My Hero Academia in English. This show, in my opinion, was one of the best shows of this season. I honestly couldn't stop myself from going back and rewatching some of the scenes from this show. For those not aware, the main character, Midoriya Izuku, wants to be a fucking beast, like this awesome god all might. And the story kind of follows his progression to become the top hero of all time by attending a hero school. Something that really works for this anime is its amazing soundtrack that kicks in almost every epic moment. Especially All Might's theme, I fucking love it. It changes the atmosphere of the entire show whenever he comes in. On top of the amazing soundtrack, there's also great animation, and one thing that I really love about it is the color scheme. It kind of makes it feel like it's out of a comic book, which it really fits the idea of this kind of superhero universe. It's fucking great, man. Story-wise though, the show isn't really anything super new. It's kind of, it gives you a Naruto vibe of gotta be the best and the journey to get there, but it does get a bit darker, and I have read the manga for this show, so I do know where it's going. Overall though, from the spring anime season, I would definitely recommend this show. It was one of my favourites. If you love shonens, you'll love this show. So while I'm on the topic of talking about my favourite shows from this season, let's go to a show that technically isn't ending this season, but it did start this season, so let's talk about it. This is ReZero Kara Hajimeru Isekai Seikatsu, or ReZero for short. The English translation is Starting Life in Another World. This show, judging by the comments on each discussion thread every week on r/anime, people fucking love this show. And I completely agree with them. So if you haven't seen this show, an easy way to explain it to you is basically Dark Souls, the anime. It explores the idea of checkpoints, and if the main character dies, he's reset in the story to a checkpoint triggered earlier, and the whole show takes this idea and just runs with it. The story follows the protagonist Natsuki Subaru, not the car by the way, as he exits a convenience store in Japan and randomly shows up in a random fantasy world. The main reason I'm enjoying this show is the checkpoint system is such an interesting concept, because every time the main character goes back, all his relationships progress up to that point is reset for everyone else but him. And the show tackles the emotional stress that comes as a result of that, because Subaru can't tell people that he has the ability to time travel. It makes it really weird because he has to try and act normal despite the things that have happened in previous timelines, and he has to try and understand how each character would expect him to act by that point in the story, and it's really emotionally taxing on the character, and stuff like that gets shown later, and it's really emotional. It's really well done. So if you couldn't tell by the fact I was singing this show's praises so hard, I definitely recommend this show. Best Girl. I feel like we've been talking about my favourite shows for this season for too much, so let's talk about one show I didn't like as much. Let's go with Big Order. So if you were to ask me what this show's about, it's about a guy who causes the end of the world by making a wish, and as a result he ends up fucking public enemy #1, everyone fucking hates him. I mean, understandably of course. And he wants to save his sister. Honestly, the plot didn't seem like that was the main interesting thing of this show. And the characters weren't that interesting either. And it didn't really have great music. And animation was eh. The show was kind of wacky, really. There was some kind of crazy moments of stuff like grabbing this girl's ear made her pregnant, and now she fucking loves the main character. Like, wait, what the fuck is this? What is this show? And also, minor spoiler if you actually plan on watching this show, as far as I'm concerned, at the end of the show, the fucking show shits the bed. It renounces everything we know about the plot, and then God comes out a fucking door, we shove him back in the door, we delete the universe, and we just start over in a cafe. And the show ends. And you're left just sitting there, staring at your screen going, did that just happen? Did I just watch 12 weeks of this show? So yeah, final thoughts. Don't watch this show unless you're looking for something just completely off the wall and kind of you want to watch it without putting much thought into it, then sure. But other than that, I wouldn't recommend it. Since I tackled the two favourites in pairs, I'm going to tackle the two shit stains in pairs. And by the second shit stain, I'm talking about Mayoiga, or The Lost Village. So this show is about a group of people running away from their old lives to escape to a place to live as a new society away from fucking everyone else for their own personal reasons. And as you can guess, from people who are leaving society, they are not the most reliable people or normal people. I mean, for God's sake, there's a character in this show who constantly screams about executing people every 2 seconds. So one of my main issues with this show right off the bat is the fact that it has fucking way too many characters. And when I say way too many characters, I mean way too many characters. It has a cast of like 30 people or something. I mean, the entire first episode is pretty much dedicated to introducing all these characters to you. And they hit you with their names, their online aliases, their fucking life story, and you're like, hold on, let me get a notepad and pen, write all this fucking shit down. So now that we've tackled the character issue, let's go on to the next issue, which is the plot issue. So when the characters arrive at Nanaki Village, they find a deserted village. And of course the natural response would be, what happened to these people? Surely there were people here at one point, but of course they just go, oh, lucky. The main issue I have with the show is the way that the characters act just isn't realistic at all. Like, they start pointing fingers for literally the smallest things, and they jump into their own factions, and they all hate each other, and they all want to kill each other despite being friends. After the initial couple of episodes, you start to wonder, is this show really a mystery show? I feel like if you look at it as more of a comedy, then it actually seems like more plausible as a show, and it doesn't seem as bad, but it's still pretty bad. There's one character in this show called Masaki, and she basically holds all the answers to the entire show, but she tells no one fucking anything. And the main character chases her around like a lost dog for literally no reason other than he likes her, even though he's known her for literally 2 seconds and all she did was nearly throw up next to a vending machine. Literally, the only reason I didn't give this show a 1 on my anime list is because it had some fucking hilarious shit, like the hippopotamus song, and in the first episode, someone throws the main character a basketball, which turns out to be a fucking time bomb, and it just blows up in his face, and it's the most weird shit ever. All in all, don't watch this show, unless if you do, because you're a fucking madman, consider it more of as a comedy than a mystery, and don't try to take it seriously, because it's really not worth it. So I feel like we've been jumping around from the best to the worst, so let's go with something about in the middle next. Let's talk about Trigger Show this season that I watched, Kiznaiver. So this anime tells the story of Katsuhira Agata, who is unable to feel pain. He ends up linked to 7 other people by some circumstances, and they all feel each other's pain. So right away you're probably thinking, this is an interesting premise for a story, and I completely agree, it is a great idea for a story. So the most interesting thing about this show is the character interaction that takes place as a result of being linked together to 7 other people. The show's all about this idea that through feeling pain together, you will become closer to each other. And as a result, a lot of the characters do get closer, and the relationships are what is the main appeal of this show. All in all, I don't really have much to say about this show, apart from its interesting premise and characters. Honestly, I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're looking for a character-orientated show. So there is another show I want to talk about. It's a slice of life show called Tanaka-kun wa itsumo kedaruge. In English, that's Tanaka-kun is always listless. So this is a slice of life show about a guy called Tanaka-kun. To describe Tanaka-kun, think Oriki Hotaro from Hyoka on steroids. But not he himself on steroids, just the tired/lazy part of him on steroids. I mean, Tanaka at some points gets so lazy he refuses to even walk. Luckily, he has a best friend who will carry him around under his arm. This show is one of my favourites because not only is it absolutely hilarious and showing Tanaka's antics, it's also super relaxing. And that extends to the character designs, the colour schemes, the music. It's just, I feel like I'd fall asleep watching this show if I wasn't too busy laughing at the fucking jokes. So if you're into slice of life shows, you'll probably like this, especially if you're into relaxing slice of life shows or hilarious slice of life shows. So let's jump from one slice of life comedy show to another slice of life comedy show. Netoge no yome wa onanoko janai to omotta. Or in English, and you thought there was never a girl online. So this story is about a high school student who is playing a game in which he marries a girl in the game. But then this girl in the game is unable to distinguish real life from the game, and she believes that they're married in real life. And the show tries to teach this girl the differences between real life and the game. The really interesting thing about this show is that throughout the show, the main character starts to like this girl that he's technically married to, and he wants to try and confess his feelings to her, but she already sees them as married, so there's this really weird disconnection, which is the basis for a lot of the comedy in the show. The show doesn't really leave much of an impression on me every week, but I still enjoy it as I'm watching it, so I would definitely recommend this show as a slice of life that you could possibly enjoy. And while we're tackling slice of lives, let's look at Sakamoto desu ga, or I'm Sakamoto, haven't you heard, or something to that effect in English. So this show, technically, it's kind of unfair to call it slice of life because it follows the character who is unrealistically amazing in almost every aspect of everything and follows his life. This show is completely mental and it knows that, and that's why it's funny. I mean, it even has crazy stuff of Sakamoto's on a walk to school and then suddenly there is a gust of wind and he is swept away in his umbrella and he goes flying through the air. But then he uses that time to be able to save a bird. I mean, it's crazy stuff like that these episodes are based on. Honestly, this show is completely hilarious and everyone should check it out. Finally, there are two slice of life shows that I was watching, but I didn't keep up with. Not because they're bad, but I kind of just didn't have time for them. And those are Sansha Sanyou and Flying Witch. They both seem like really interesting slice of life shows, and I definitely would recommend them. I just haven't watched them enough, and as a result, I can't really talk about the plot or the character development, but they definitely seemed interesting. I was watching as well Sosei no Onmyoji or Twin Star Exorcist, but I did hear that's going to be 50 episodes, and apparently a lot of it is going to be filler, and I realised I'm not that into this show and dropped it. It's not bad by any means, but it is pretty mediocre, I feel. I actually completely forgot about 100, so I'll just slip this in here. 100 is also completely mediocre. It's a magical high school anime, and if you've seen one, you've pretty much seen them all. It doesn't try to do anything extremely different. The characters are kind of interesting. The main character's not developed really at all. It kind of was so mediocre it completely slipped under my radar, to be honest. It's not bad, so feel free to watch it if you want. So the last show I have to talk about is a show that I also dropped this season called Android. This show's about a character who also gets sent to another world, kind of like ReZero, but it's not nearly as interesting. I honestly don't know too much about the plot because I did drop it early on in the season, but I really didn't see myself getting interested in it at all. And for what I've seen on Reddit and the comments and the discussion threads, I don't think a lot of people are watching it, to be honest. Final little comment on this season is Assassination Classroom ended this season. I'm not going to talk about it in too much detail because it has been going on for like a year now, but I just want to bring attention to the fact that it did end this season, so if you want to pick it up, I would definitely recommend it. It is a great show, a really funny comedy. Well, that's me pretty much outlined my thoughts for every show that I watched on the spring anime season. I know there are other shows, but I didn't watch them, so obviously I can't comment on them. If you think they're worth watching, feel free to tell me to watch them. In my opinion, this season has been one of the best anime seasons I've ever watched, but I've only been watching seasonal anime for a couple of seasons, so I guess that's not too great a statement. So if you liked the video, feel free to leave a like, and if you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe and make sure to tell me that you want to see more. Have a nice day, guys, and I'll see you next time.